Ever since I started this workers only series, there has been one comment throughout every single video that stood out. People really wanting to see the Night Elf campaign. Well, ladies and gentlemen, here we are. And it was just as painful as everyone thought it would be. Cue up the Soviet music. Hi, I'm Amon, and I tried beating the Warcraft 3 Night Elf campaign with only workers. That means I can only build Wisps, but since they can't attack and can conveniently turn into trees, I'm allowing myself to build trees as well. And of course, I usually start the level with a bunch of units, but I have to kill them off immediately. And as always, I have to play on the hardest difficulty. One might be naive and think that this is gonna be a lot easier than the previous campaigns, since I can attack with pretty decent buildings now. Oh, but my sweet summer child. No tree has ever seen the horrors they are about to experience in this campaign. And now, let the suffering begin.
Combat Engineer, what is it?
The first mission is another one of those tutorial missions where the enemy doesn't attack you until you've built a couple of combat units. And since I'm not gonna be building any of those, I can take as much time as I need to make 10 trees and attack the enemy base with them. And I also brought a bunch of Wisps for repairs. Now, if you've watched my previous workers only videos, you'll know that workers repairing buildings have a higher target priority than the buildings themselves. Well, for some reason, this isn't the case with Wisps.
Praise the Lord!
They can repair buildings as much as they want and they won't be targeted by the AI. And I will be taking full advantage of that during this challenge. But for now, a couple of them were enough to out-repair the enemy defenders attacking me. And after a while I got bored, so I focused on the enemy paladin and I won. Tutorial time is over, now it's time for the real pain to come.
This is harder than it looks, you know!
The name of this level is Speed, since you have to kill 3 druids before the enemy lumber cutting counter reaches 0. And speed is, well, the opposite of what trees are. So this level is actually gonna be one of the toughest levels we have to deal with. Now, although I have to use trees, I never said where I actually have to plant them. But more on that later. After quickly taking the expansion the game gives me so freely, I made a bunch of trees next to the fountain. And after rooting a bunch of towers in place, I prepared them to attack the enemy base. Oh, sorry, did I say attack? I meant distract the enemy base. I lured the enemy defenders to attack me, and while they were busy with my towers, I smuggled a couple of Wisps through their base to the island with the druids. And now, if you've seen my no production challenge, you'll know that the enemy has Wildkin defenders that spawn only once, and if they have nothing to target on the island, they will move to my base. So I baited the first druid's defenders with my Wisps, and the Wildkin came down to my tower wall to meet their swift end. And now it's time for part 2 of this plan. In the back of this, I made a bunch of workers and I told them all to move to the island once again. But this time, it wasn't to bait anyone. It was time to go on the offensive. I started making a bunch of towers as far away from the druid as I can. Unfortunately, he found me at some point, so I had to distract him with a couple of other proxy towers. But eventually the towers finished, and I managed to out-repair the guy and kill him. 2 more to go. I had a bunch of workers by now, so the only logical thing to do was to make a bunch more towers before the next guy. And although I managed to kill his defenders, the problem with him was his huge range. I actually had to uproot my trees and get into the trees' range, which took several hours.
2 hours later.
But after the trees were rooted, they managed to take him down. Then I went after the last druid, but his defenders are very big and he does huge damage as well. So I only managed to kill his defenders before losing all my trees. Well, all but one. And I really thought that one wasn't gonna make much of a difference, but I was wrong. Now, since I ran out of Wisps, I needed to bring in a fresh batch. But first, I had to once again bait the enemy defenders. And get this. Wisps have a detonate ability, which damages summoned units. and I usually associate this with undead skeletons. But turns out the enemy Blade Master clones are also summoned units. So next time you're playing Night Elves and you want to get rid of this really annoying clone ability, you can use workers to do this. You are very welcome. Now, I brought a fresh batch of workers and my hero through the enemy base, but then I checked the timer. There were only 7 trees remaining. I didn't have time to make any more trees, but then I remembered. There was this one tree that I forgot during my last attack, and since he was already built, I was able to repair him while he was approaching the last druid. And it took me a while, but eventually I managed to out-repair the druid and win. But of course, after the working class doing all the work, the hero has to once again take all credit for it, because turns out my Wisps can't finish the level on their own. The hero has to do it for them. Ugh.
I'm in danger!
The name of the next mission is Mobility. And you're supposed to use your trees to move around and capture gold mines and stuff. Of course, you're also supposed to have a mobile army of units supporting them, but you can't have everything. Anyways, first I fully mined 2 gold mines and I made a bunch of trees in front of the first enemy base. I occasionally get attacked by flying attack waves, but my protectors easily take care of those. But before attacking the base, let's talk about trees. There are several trees the Night Elves have, but the Ancient of War is the cheapest one. But he's also the strongest one if we don't count the Tree of Life. So those are usually gonna be my front lines. The Ancient Protector has a really solid ranged attack while rooted, so they're gonna be my backline. I also started the level with an Ancient of Lore, but those are weaker than an Ancient of War, and this one is probably gonna be killed really quickly. When I started attacking the base, my biggest problem is the cannon tower. This one does huge siege damage, which means he does extra damage to my rooted trees. And the only way to stop him was going into melee range. Emphasis on going. Going really slowly. And the enemy had 2 of those. Ugh.
6 hours later.
But after killing the towers, the rest of the base was pretty easy. I simply had too many trees for them to actually stand a chance against me. My next obstacle is the Haunted Forest. The forest filled with skeletons and ghosts which are huge in numbers and huge in range. So it took me quite some time to get through this section. The skeletons in particular hurt quite a bit. But thankfully my trees can eat other trees to recover their health, which is pretty useful in combat. Plus, my workers still don't really get attacked while repairing, so they also helped a bunch. Now, in order to cleanse this corruption, I had to get to the edge of the forest and kill the revenant which is cursing it. This guy isn't a complete idiot and knows he is fighting trees, so he actually loves moving out of my range, so that he can be hit. But not even he or his 10 ghost friends can outdamage my 10 wisps healing 1 tree. So we managed to take him down. And now the forest can be walked through. 1 more hurdle remaining. The corrupted Night Elf base. On the plus side, there is a gold mine right in front of it, which is gonna allow me to build a bunch of units. On the downside, the enemy actually saw me before I could build up more trees, so I actually had to fight the defenders with this measly force. But again, a bunch of workers healing trees did their job well. There are a bunch of towers on the high ground here, so I had to clear it first. Unfortunately, my trees are quite slow, and the enemy managed to mass a bunch of defenders against me, and they killed most of my attackers. In fact, there were only 2 more trees remaining, one of which, surprisingly, was the still alive Ancient of Lore. But I guess his time has finally come to an end. Or not. Gosh, this guy really doesn't want to kick the bucket, huh? Alright then, you have bought yourself a few more minutes, old man. But now it was time to attack again. And this time I've put the old tree on the front line, so there is no way it's gonna survive. Wait, what's happening here? Why are those wisps trying to save him? The Ancient of War is far more cost effective to repair. Oh, whatever. He'll die when we enter the base. Oh, they're still repairing him, huh? Fine, old man. You win. You can live out your life in peace. After that, I made a bunch of towers on the lower side of the base, and they started shooting their hearts out. And once I surrounded the main enemy tree, any resistance was futile. And that was it. Oh wait, no, it wasn't. Once more, the hero has to take all the credit in order to win this level. Oh, but the next level, there will be no heroes taking credits there. None whatsoever.
We're not a cult so much as a maniacal group of fanatical blade-wielding zealots.
We are nearing the end of the campaign, and the good news here is that I finally have access to an upgrade that increases my tree's armor and movement speed. The bad news is that they still feel like freaking snails. But alright, I guess I'm gonna have to live with that. Thankfully, this level is loaded with gold mines, so I will have no economic problems whatsoever. When I had enough tree defenders for my base, I went on the offense. There are two enemy bases here, one on the right and one on the left. The right one is miles easier, and it didn't really take a lot of time for me to bust it with a couple of trees and then go after their production structures. The bigger problem was the left base, that has a bunch of pretty powerful units defending it. They took out my initial attack wave, but as I said already, there are so many resources on this level that I was mining my 4th gold mine already, and I managed to overwhelm them with enough attack waves. Now, this was the easier part. The harder part is that the enemy has a bunch of portals on this level which summon deadly chaos damage dealing units. And those need to be stopped. There are 2 portals on the northeast, but they don't activate until I've done my first objective, claiming the Skull of Gul'dan. But there is actually nothing stopping me from destroying them before they activate. Or at least so I thought. May I introduce to you Protagonist, the guy I need to kill on this level. The guy with divine armor who can spawn multiple freaking infernals from nothing. The only positive thing here is that the damage to the portals is permanent, so I only had to distract him and his guards while my trees finished the job. And to do this, I used the most ancient and powerful form of RTS builds, throwing money at a problem until it disappears. After both portals were down, it was time to attack the last portal on the northwest. And that one was actually really easy to deal with. Turns out a guy with divine armor who summons infernals really makes all the difference in the world. But now it was time to finish the job. On the plus side, the guy is all alone here, and one might even be tempted to feel sorry for him. But he also has divine armor, so he will take almost no damage from anything my trees can throw at him. And turns out what they can throw at him are boulders. And that's it. So I made sure they're gonna be able to throw a lot of boulders at him by filling the whole area with ancient protectors. And now it was time to strike. But before attacking him, I had to make sure he doesn't use any of his powerful spells against me, in particular the Infernal Summon. But thankfully Wisps can help me here as well. The Wisp Detonate ability doesn't only deal damage to summoned units, it also drains 50 mana from an enemy. So 20 of my Wisps gave their lives in order to drain Protagonist of his mana. After that, I baited him to attack my protectors, and the slowest boss fight in history can begin. Thankfully, at some point he decided to move straight into my tower forest, so even more towers can hit him now. Don't get me wrong though, it still took ages to take him down.
One eternity later.
But eventually, he managed to fall. And now all that remains is to do the most lore-accurate depiction of the final level. What could possibly go wrong? This is it, ladies and gentlemen, the last mission. And this one has me defend for 45 minutes from relentless undead attack waves, which are led by the ginormous Archimod himself. Now, when you don't get to cheese this level with landmines, it's actually one of the hardest missions in the game. And unfortunately, I don't have access to landmines on workers only, so I had to play this one legitimately. First, the enemy gives me a few minutes to build up, which in turn means I get to build a couple of towers in the human base, which is being led by Jaina. And yeah, she was useless in the final Orc mission, and she is useless in the final Night Elf mission as well. She only ever produces a maximum of 6 units. So, needless to say, that first base fell quite quickly, especially since I didn't have the time or resources to build more than a couple of towers. The second base, on the other hand, is defended by Thrall, and he is far more competent than Jaina. Plus, I had a bunch of resources by now, so I built a bunch of towers at his base entrance. But then we have arrived at another problem. Meat wagons. These guys harass my towers from range, and for whatever reason, the enemy decided to build a bunch of them. And I mean a bunch. They build like 10 of them per attack wave, which attacks every 2 to 3 minutes. So I couldn't even approach them with my towers, but the only thing I could do is kill all other attackers and let Thrall take care of the meat wagons. And that worked for exactly 2 minutes. But then the enemy started sending heroes with their attack waves. And those heroes range from infernal spawning dreadlords to liches with death and decay. So there was nothing I could really do here, because even if I take care of the heroes now, the meat wagons will skin me alive. I held on for as long as I could, but Thrall was eventually defeated. And after Archimonde delivered his victory monologue, I had about 30 minutes remaining to defend myself from endless hordes of enemies. Easy peasy, right? I again made a bunch of towers in front of my base, and again for a tiny second it seemed like it might be enough. But then enemy meat wagons started showing up, and all my hopes went down the window. I didn't even manage to survive for 10 minutes before being completely overwhelmed. Honestly, I wasn't even remotely close to winning, and I have no way of dealing with a single meat wagon, let alone the 10 of them they send per attack wave. So I guess that's it. This challenge is impossible. Thank you for watching, and I guess I'll see you in the next... wait a second. Do you smell that too? A very familiar smell. Is that cheese? But this one is different than the others. This one smells dirtier. Much, much dirtier. You remember the monologue Archimonde gave when he destroyed Thrall's base? Well, if you check the footage a bit more closely, you will see that all the attacking meat wagons were destroyed when the cutscene triggered. So that got me thinking, what actually happens during this little event? Well, a couple of things. Firstly, and most importantly, every enemy combat unit except their heroes dies. And all 4 of the heroes are teleported into the center of Thrall's base. The second thing is that 3 acolytes spawn to start building enemy base buildings, while the previous base in Jaina's former base is being deconstructed. These 3 acolytes also have 30 seconds of invulnerability when they spawn. And the third thing is that this event triggers after destroying Thrall's town hall, but all other buildings around his town hall are left standing. And that includes any buildings belonging to me. So a plan was made. I built a bunch of towers inside Thrall's base, and then I betrayed him by destroying his town hall. This triggered this hilarious cutscene where Archimonde is complaining of this being too easy, while 20 towers are next to him waiting to ruin his day.
Are there none left to stand against the Legion? This is almost too easy.
Now, there were a bunch of towers in the base, but the acolytes being immortal for 30 seconds still gave them the opportunity to build a bunch of buildings. But here is an interesting little fun fact. The 30 seconds of them being unkillable are regular 30 seconds, not 30 seconds of playtime. That would mean if I were to lower the game speed to as slow as possible, those 30 seconds will pass without them being able to do a whole much. Because, you know, the game is on slow speed. And that's exactly what I did. When you press the minus button on the keyboard, the game will slow down. And the poor acolytes managed to make a crypt and a necropolis before being killed by my trees. The necropolis being built though is a problem, so I told all my towers to focus down the necropolis. And after they killed it, the enemy only had one more building, a crypt. And after they deconstructed their other base, the enemy workers there die as well. So now the enemy doesn't have a single worker remaining. And after some time, I realized that the crypt that they have doesn't even produce any units. Well, turns out the enemy can actually get supply blocked on this level if they have no necropolis or ziggurats. And that's exactly what happened. So despite having a building, the enemy never uses it. The only thing they can attack me with are their heroes. Now those heroes are pretty strong, but they don't stand much of a chance against a bunch of towers in my base. And this is actually it. The enemy can't do anything anymore, so I spent the next 20 minutes building up a bunch of Wisps for an epic final confrontation with Archimonde. And after they managed to distract him for a few seconds, I won. This is what the epic confrontation truly looked like in all its glory. And yeah, turns out the heroes can't take the credit for this one. The great archdemon was defeated by the working class. And in an embarrassing twist of events, by workers who can't even attack. So much for being a great archdemon. And look guys, I can't tell you what's next because I don't really know. I would really like to say that I'm gonna do the Sentinels campaign next, but I think there are objective reasons why that one might not be entirely doable. But I'm probably gonna give it a try regardless. And I guess that's all for me today. Thank you so much for watching. Like and subscribe if you liked the video and you wanna see more, it really does help me and the channel grow. And I guess I'll see you in the next challenge.